Thank you for joining me on Ethocast. I'm Eddie Francis. Joining me is Edson O'Neale, Big Ed, my boy, who is a speaker. He's a higher education advocate. He's one of my colleagues at Greek University. He's also a student employment JLD coordinator at the University of South Florida. And best of all, he is a brother of Alpha Phi
Hey,
Alpha.
buddy.
One of the impressive things about you as a colleague of Greek University is from the minute I started hearing your story, I was really impressed with your story, your spirit, your drive, and the passion that you have for wanting to help students become better leaders.
Thank you.
And your path to becoming a professional speaker started with a student who encouraged you to spread your messages across the country.
You did.
And so, first of all, talk about that moment when you got that moment of encouragement from that student. But then, second of all, what kinds of messages are those that you like to share with students?
Right. So that moment with that student was interesting, right? Because he was a student. So we were driving to a conference. We were going to the NACA conference.
Mm-hmm.
And he was on the verge of bringing a fraternity to campus. He was trying to bring Sigma Lambda Beta to the campus. And he was just talking to me about some of his struggles and frustrations, and here's the things going to happen. And I was trying to motivate him and keep him, headstrong, and explain to him kind of look at where you were months ago to where you are now and different things. And he asked me for advice on different things. And then he just said, have you ever thought about taking this message to tell other students at other campuses? And I was like, no. He was like, and then he said, the message you're telling to me, do you know, I find this insightful and amazing. I could only imagine how many students at different colleges can benefit from this. And then I was like, huh. And then it's ironic. I brought a speaker to campus. And then after that speaker spoke to our students, several students came up to me. Edson, this speaker was great. And this speaker was kind of saying the same things you've been saying for the past month.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, I'm paying this speaker to come to say the same things that I'm doing. And I'm just like, so yeah, maybe people can pay me for going and sharing my message, right? So
Yeah, because you're sitting there, you're like,
yeah.
so wait, so what's really good?
Yeah. Yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? So that's when I started to try to present more at conferences and, working more with some of the speaking agencies. And then I met Mike and, here I am with Greek University. But to answer the second part of your question in regards to the messages I was sharing with students, I mean, I was basically, provide them that access and resource that they didn't have, maybe growing up and coming to college. So I was really sharing a message of, are you aware of the resources you have available to you? And I do feel I believe you're an individual who could take advantage of these resources and really make a name for yourself, right? So whenever I come across a student, we have a good conversation, I would say, hey, have you ever thought about being an RA? No, what's that? And I'm like, well, RA is a resident assistant. You work in the residence halls and you get a free room and board. What? Free room and board? The eyes, kind of like, and so then I'm like, well, I know Residence Life is hosting an informational on Tuesday. You should check it out. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they go, and then, Lord behold, they become an RA.
So it sounds like you're really good at first of all, presenting to students that there are more resources than they realize at their campus. And for people from campuses, because the people who I really want to listen to this podcast, besides Greeks, I really want student affairs professionals to listen to this.
Yes.
And I know there are a lot of student affairs professionals who are in the exact same spot that you were in, saying, well, I've been telling you this, and I just paid somebody to come and tell you the same thing. But I think the good thing about that is that what a student affairs professional is paying for when a speaker comes in and does that is you're paying for somebody to come in and help reinforce your message so that when we leave, you can keep that message going, and the students because was the students' confidence in you built after that speaker left? Can you say that maybe?
Some yes,
Yeah.
some yes, some I believe already had the confidence in me, but
Right.
I believe the speaker I guess reiterated and kind of expanded their confidence. So those that already had confidence in me expanded it and even improved it even more. And those that were kind of like, that really helped them with their confidence. For I was like, okay, if
Yeah.
Edson is saying this, and then he's bringing this speaker that we've never met before is saying the same thing, there is some value to what Edson is saying, and it's like he's really here for our best interest. He's really here to support us. Edson really gives a damn about us and wants us to
Hmm.
succeed.
So, with that
Yes.
being said, you're really open about your journey and discovering the power of vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
So, what got you into that place?
Wow. I was really thinking about this, and I was like, what road should I go down when it comes to this question, right? And it all boils down to my departure and the time things ended with my time at St. Leo and how I got let go from that institution.
Mm,
Um, I remember we had a talk one day about leadership, and you
hmm.
mentioned how you asked a leader, if you took your title away, who are you? Right?
Mm,
I remember
hmm.
you sharing that with me, and it really resonated with me because if you had asked me that question when I was at St. Leo, I couldn't answer it. I
Right.
was so engraved and so I was in it with St. Leo. So when you ask me who I am, I'd say, oh, I'm Student Activities, I'm the director, I'm St. Leo. That's who I am. And going there as an undergrad, really becoming the person who I'm meant to be as an undergrad and coming back, giving back to the students what St. Leo gave me, and then to really, make an impact and, really help students grow, especially our students of color.
Yeah.
Building those foundations with all of our students, bringing events that the school never thought that they can do, bringing those type of things. So making an impact on that campus and for things to way to end that it did it, it was really heart wrenching for me and different
Yeah.
things. So when I got let go, I had to kind of figure out and really reflect on, okay, who am I? Because I don't have this position anymore. So who am
Mm,
I? And then also realizing, okay, I don't have a job anymore. So I'm not going to be getting any income. So how am I going to pay for these bills?
yeah.
So I was in a very dark place around that time, and then it happened around COVID. So COVID wasn't helping because we
Mm,
had to be subdued to where you were. So that wasn't helping with that. And then, everything going on with Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. So all of that was going on as well too.
yeah.
So I was just kind of like at odds with myself as far as like, who am I and what am I going to do and what's going to happen? And, I was questioning my value as an individual. And that's when I talk about, my mental health and it wasn't great and how, I thought about my life didn't matter and I didn't belong, in the world. I'm like, man, I should maybe take my life. And, you know, I, I share this story with some people and I'm gonna share it with you, Eddie. And I still don't know if this was a dream or if I actually did it, but it felt so real. So I like to say that I dreamt it, but it felt so real, right? But it was in the middle of a night. I couldn't sleep. And then I just woke up and then I had decided that I'm going to get in my car and then just go and drive off a bridge. I was like, I'm done.
Mm, mm,
And then I went to my front door and something told me to stop.
mhm.
And I stopped. I thought about my life and all my family and all my friends. And then I went to my freezer. I took a shot of Patron, and then and
Okay.
then I, and then I went back to sleep. And
Mm,
I woke up next day. I kind of went about my day, but I always ask myself, was that a dream or did I actually do that? Because
Yeah.
it was just so real how with what occurred.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of like, it was always just kind of like, did that really happen? But, that was a turning point in my life, you know what I'm saying? So going through that and being vulnerable, and everyone thinks vulnerability is like, everyone thinks that, oh, you have to be open and let everyone know what's going on. It's like, it's not that. Being vulnerable is really an internal thing that allows you to seek your individuality and who you are as a person. And in
Yeah.
doing that, that's going to allow
Mm.
you to help others kind of seek their own value and their validity in what they're doing. So when
Mm.
I was sharing my struggles with some of my fraternity brothers and my close friends and even my family members, they were like, Edson, like, this is surprising because you've always held us down. You've held us together.
Who
Like,
so you know what? So this is that question that has come up for so many people, especially since the COVID lockdown. Who cares for the person who's caring for the people?
right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? So they were like, you always hold us down. So it's like to
Yeah.
hear that you were like going through this is like, man, like, I think in some people's eyes, I I felt they believe I was not human because I was always superhuman because I always like
Yeah.
found ways to get things done or be there or supportive or make things work. So when people saw me or heard I was understood that I was, they were like, "Whoa, like Edson, like no, like we got
Mm-hmm.
you, man." And during that time allowed me to see who's in my circle, who are people who I
Mm-hmm.
know that I can be around and who has my back, because I also saw people's true colors. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
people who I thought were family or who was part of my circle, you know, wasn't really a part of it. So vulnerability allows you to see a lot of that, right? It allows you to see, really allows you to really internalize and see who you are, and it also allows people to kind of see the true you, and it will allow you to see the true self of other individuals as well. So when I talk about vulnerability, that's what I like to engage in as far as the self growth
Mm-hmm.
and the personalization of what makes you who you are, your
Mm-hmm.
strengths, your weaknesses. It really helped me to own up to a lot of things and feelings that I was feeling, but it
Mm-hmm.
also allowed me to embrace a lot of things about life as well that I might have been naive about or wanted to ignore.
Mm, yeah. Mm. You're listening to Ethocast. I'm Eddie Francis, and we're talking to Edson O'Neale. Ed is a speaker. He is a higher education advocate. He is one of my colleagues with Greek University, and that makes me think, Ed, about there's so much talk right now about leaders developing vulnerability to become stronger leaders.
Correct. Yep.
However, you know this way more than I do because you have done student activities. When you take a look at students, especially heterosexual male students, who we always have this thing where we feel that we have to be almost so close to perfection in
Yes.
everything we do. We are
Yes.
such high achievers.
Yes.
And for a lot of us, when we hear vulnerability, and I'm not in this number. I mean, I'm long past those days, but if you had mentioned vulnerability to me in my late teens, my early 20s, when I was in college as a chapter president, who's really trying to quote unquote run the yard and all this other stuff,
Yep. Yep.
I would have been like, nah, man, I'm not soft. I'm not doing that,
Yep.
And
Yep.
so
Yep.
how do you
Yep.
reframe that discussion? I mean, especially for guys like that, how do you reframe that discussion so that they understand that vulnerability actually is a strength? Because
Yes.
what I'm hearing from you is that in a moment of vulnerability, in a moment that you were able to take on a very personal internal challenge, you became a much stronger person, especially a much stronger man. That's
Yes.
what I'm hearing.
Yes.
How
Absolutely.
do
Yep.
how do you reframe that conversation to our friends who are in college?
That's a really good question, man. And it's hard, right? Because I don't think when they say soft, I don't think they're saying that as far as like, oh, I'm not soft. I think they really want to say, I don't want other people to see me as
Yes,
soft.
yes, yes. Yeah.
So when they say, "Oh, I'm not soft," is
Mm-hmm.
they're really saying, "I don't want others to see me soft," right?
Yep.
Because there's that thought of being taken advantage of. There
Mm-hmm.
is that thought of people not taking me seriously.
Mm-hmm.
There's that thought of, people might think that they can say and do whatever they want or comfortable,
Yeah.
or they might not take me seriously. And they don't want to be viewed that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, or it can also be in situations like myself, we've gone through that, so we don't want to go through it again. So we put this brick wall and be like, yeah, like I'm tough, I'm quiet, and I just show up and do what I have to do, and
Yeah.
they hold all their feelings and everything in because they don't want to go through a situation like that again. Or I know for me, I always feel like I'm not heard, or people don't really care what I have to say. So sometimes I kind of just state to myself and kind of like not say anything, because I don't know how people are going to react, or people, or if people are going to take me seriously, right?
Yeah.
But in being, what I would tell people is that it's okay to be who you are. Like, you can't be anybody else. Like, I could only be Edson O'Neale, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the individual that I am is that I'm very passionate, I'm determined, I'm dependable, and I'm someone who will have your back.
So speaking of people um being wanting to be viewed a certain way, you have a presentation that, I would love to see this presentation one day, champions in the making. Because you talk about something that I believe also very deeply in, and that's people finding their own voices within their organizations.
Right.
What does that mean for someone to find their own voice within a fraternity or sorority?
I mean, it could mean a lot of different things, man. But for me, I would say when it comes to finding your voice, it is just being comfortable and having that confidence, just knowing this is kind of my role, right? And with my role, this is how my role will help benefit the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Benefit the chapter, benefit the organization. That's one way. Finding your voice is, having a confidence to, when the chapter is not making a correct decision, stepping up and having a confidence, that courage, and that mindset, which I talk about a lot of my presentations. Those are three things I feel that are important for individuals to have in these leadership roles. You got to have the confidence to kind of do things, but you have to have the courage to act on it. And you have that mindset to kind of push through and to whatever comes your way afterwards to really handle those situations.
Mm-hmm.
So having that confidence and courage and mindset to kind of step up and say, is how is this going to benefit our organization?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are we maintaining the values of our organization? Are we, have we really thought about, what we're going to do? Like, and maybe from having that conversation, they're able to share why we want to do this. And you're like, you know what? I see where you're coming from now. It makes sense. Let's do this. Or it gives
Mm-hmm.
them the opportunity to kind of be like, you know what? Maybe we didn't think about this right. Maybe we should, maybe relook this and maybe go back to it, right? And I really talk about finding your voice in your organizations because I know what it feels like to lose your voice.
But here, you know what? So here is the trippy other side of that conversation with the individual really finding their voice within an organization. I had a boss who once said, I want everybody here to bring your whole self to work. I said, okay, do you really want that? And she's, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, I need you to think very carefully about what it is you just said
Right.
and what it is you're asking people to do. So that's a big leadership trend right now. Everybody should be able to bring their whole selves to work. They should be able to bring their whole selves to the organization. That sounds great in theory. The question is, for me, with everyone finding their own voice within the organization, my point is this. You have to have a leader who has the capacity to handle all those voices.
Correct.
And they have to be ready for all those voices, because, and I'm not saying that this is a right or wrong thing. What I'm saying is if that's what a leader really wants, then they got to be ready for it, because all those voices, they're coming one way or the other.
They're coming. They're
They're
coming.
coming one way or the other. Like
They're coming.
that one wacky chapter member who you're sitting there going, I don't know if we should have initiated this person. That voice is going to get heard one way or the other, whether you like it or not. They're going to wind up saying something one day that's going to set you off. And to your credit, Ed, about your helping people becoming a champion within their own organization, people should advocate for themselves within an organization. The fraternity or sorority has its mission and its values, but people are people. So it's like a colleague of mine in radio says people be peopling. One with the other, man. So but I love it. I just think that as a leader, you can say that, but you got to be ready for people to become that champion within their organization. You got to figure out how you're going to work with that. That brings me to my last question for you. You have another presentation called You Be the Letters, and it really calls for Greeks to examine why they join their fraternities and sororities. And as someone who's a fraternity or sorority life leader, how can members tell their brothers or their sisters who seem to be losing their way, how can they encourage them to get back on track so that they can be the letters? They can really enjoy being who they are and finding their voice, but at the same time, they can do that which benefits the organization.
Right. Yeah, man, this is something that I'm very passionate about, and I try to send the messages to organizations. And I want to give you some backstory. What kind of helped me come up with this topic was because as a fraternity sorority leader at St. Leo, I would hear students joining their sorority, their fraternity, and then after months into the organization, oh, it's not what I thought it was going to be. Or someone actually said, they sold me a dream, and now that I'm in it, it's a nightmare.
Wow. Yeah.
Like someone said that to me, and I was like, whoa. People joining their organization, and then, they're like, leaving or withdrawing or dropping or denouncing or whatever, that lots of different individuals. So, and some of these individuals were very strong caliber individuals leaving organizations that I know that they can benefit the org, and they can see a lot of benefit from the organization. So I was just kind of like, what's going on here? So then I started to ask questions and talk to them and kind of like, what happened? What was going on? And they were sharing some of the things that were happening as they're going through recruitment and what was going on there. And then how things changed when they were in there. I would notice some people changing. So like they were a certain way before they joined. And then after they got initiated, I noticed there was a change in them as well. So these are things individuals in the chapters needs to realize and see. Don't ignore it. Like if you were initiating an individual into your chapter and you saw they were a certain way, or they sold you, this is why I want to join your organization, and they sold you on that. After they get initiated, if you're seeing a change, you need to call that person out and say, hey, since you've been initiated, I've noticed a change. Here's what I've seen, right? And this is completely different from when you were, expressing interest in joining an organization. Things have changed. So having that conversation, like, what is different since you become a member? Like, what's changed? Like, why are you not the same? And what's going on, like if there's anything personal going, like really try to really dive deep into kind of what caused this change. Like, is it something with the chapter that they saw and it was kind of like whatever? Is it the outside noise they might be hearing from the community? Is it that they they watched a movie and they're like, I want to live that. So they got in and they were
Mm,
like, what is that? You know what I'm saying? So trying to get to the bottom of what's going on and helping them understand the mission and purpose of why you join this organization. And I
mm,
also think it's important that the chapter needs to lead by example, right? And I think as you're saying these things to these members, the chapter needs to follow through with what you're saying as well. Because when you're saying these, and you're having these conversations with these individuals, and when the chapter is really showing what you're saying as well, then it will really bring a mindset to the individual like, oh, like not only is the individual kind of telling me these things, the chapter through their actions is really following through with what he's saying as well. So maybe there's things that I might need to change or I need to do differently as well, right?
mhm.
So but also on the organization side, when you're recruiting these new members, you have to be authentic and genuine with your recruiting.
Yeah.
And you need to make sure when you're speaking with these individuals that you are potentially want to be members of your organization, that they see as much as your authentic self as they can. Because when they want to be a part of the organization, they want to be part of the people. They see something in you to where I want to be a part of your, I want to be part of your circle, right? I want to be part of this organization to become someone different, right? And I
Hmm.
want to make a change, and I want to impact the community, and I see this organization as can help me get there, but I can also get a lot from the organization as well. So
Mhm.
when you're telling individuals, oh yeah, we do that, yeah, we'll help you, and then they get initiated, and then you just like you forget about that, and then the person's like, well, I was told that this is going to be this and it's not. So then the missions and values that they join the organization for is not living up to their expectations. So then it's
Yeah.
like, do I continue doing this? Do I
Mhm.
try to speak up and let my chapter know this is why I joined? And why I joined is different from what we're doing right now. So how do we get them aligned so that we can, really move this chapter in the right direction? And some are able to do that. Some have the capacity and they're able to get the right people on board to where they can do that. Some try and they don't do too well. Unfortunately, sometimes they fail and they're doing all this work and they're like, I'm doing all this work for an organization that in some ways don't care about the
Mhm.
bigger picture or the mission. And in some ways, it may not care about me as an individual. So why am I putting all this work toward this organization that hasn't really given me anything back in return in some ways as far as how I can become a better individual? So it comes from both sides as far as, the chapter and they're authentic when it comes to recruiting and sticking to what they're discussing. Obviously, people aren't perfect. Things are perfect. You're going to deal with different situations. You're going to come across different things. Things change all the time. Policies, guidelines change, whether it's the university or the national. So, but as an organization, how do you come together and how do you overcome and deal with situation? How do you pick yourself back up? How do you dust yourself off? And how do you push forward, right? That's what sets you apart from everyone else. Like when you can look at an organization and you can say, no matter what we're going through, when crap hits the fan, we're gonna come together and we're gonna fight through this together as a
Yeah.
group.
Yeah.
Like that sets you apart from other organizations, right? And then
Yeah.
for the individuals, like you just have to recall and remember like why you joined. And if things have changed since you've been initiated, what brought about that change and what can you do to make sure that you find your lane and your place again of your why and why you joined. So I just want to bring that to the attention of individual members and group organizations and understand these are important conversations you need to have. And if you want your organization to grow and be better and make a difference in the community, it all starts with the people. Like we always talk about that, we talk about that when it comes to jobs and companies. It's about the people. When you have the right people in positions and you are able to provide opportunities, resources for those people to be successful, and you're in an environment to where like you have the backing and support of your superiors or your team or whatever it is, it will help your organization to thrive. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe that organizations that aren't doing well or aren't being successful, I just don't think they're for the people.
Mm-hmm.
So
Ed,
yeah.
I'm smiling from ear to ear because you are speaking my language, my brother. But let me bring this in for landing by asking you one more question because I wanted to wrap this up. However, you said something, and I gotta ask you this.
Go ahead,
You
my friend.
mentioned, so listen, man. You mentioned that for your presentation, you be the letters. You mentioned being able to fight through something together as a chapter.
Correct.
Having been a student affairs professional, do you think, and I know we all have our opinions about this, but
Hmm.
did you see that it was something that may be becoming somewhat of a lost art? Is that a fair question?
With chapters,
Yeah, let's stick with let's stick with Greek life. Yeah, with chapters.
from my perspective, I would say I would say yes. I would say
Yeah.
it might be a lost art, and I think it's a lost art is because from my perspective, I would say it just the individualizations aren't aligned as far as the mindset.
Yeah.
So, and there's no compromise because I talk about this in my presentation as well. I talk about egos. And I talk about. I don't even need to continue. You're laughing,
No,
so
not
you know what I'm
really.
talking about. But like I've expressed and I said, egos can destroy organizations. When I get you are like you laughing and just a physical expression is just you're just really expressing like what I'm saying. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
you're like oh my god he's speaking he's saying exactly like but it's true though
I
like
will say that I will say this. I have been on both ends of that. I have been the victim of the ego, and I've been the ego. So
I
that's
would
why
say
it's so funny
I
to
would say
me.
me too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
So just like, egos can destroy organizations. So if there is no compromise or coming together or looking at the bigger picture and really understanding and realizing this is what we need to do to come together in order to survive, it's not going to work. So I coming from a Greek life perspective, when I talk to individuals in the chapter, they're like, I can't work with my sister. Everything has to be her way or the highway. She doesn't listen. She doesn't want to do anything. When I talk to guys in the fraternity, man, this guy is stubborn. He doesn't want to listen. It's his way or the highway. Like we can't get anything done. And those organizations you see are struggling. They're not doing well because they're not on the same page. People get bitter, people get upset, people get like annoyed, and they get frustrated. So they're just like, and then people get to the point where they're like, look, man, I don't need this, man. I don't need this. I'm
Yeah,
I'm good, man. Let me go to the beach and just chill out, man. Or that's what I mean. Let me go chill with my girl, man. Like, what I'm saying? My girl love
yeah.
me. I love my girl. Yeah, I'll do what y'all want. No, I'll go chill with my girl, man. We're going to go to the movies or do something. Like, what I'm saying? Like, people just get tired and fed up to the point where they're like, I just don't have the energy to do this anymore. And those people that give up and don't have the energy are the ones that are really trying their best to make change. And when you lose those people, it makes things harder, because there's people that are kind of there and not really doing anything. So they're like, I have to step up, but they don't really know how to or might not even want to. So it brings this whole kind of like disregard for organization, or where do we go, or what's going on, and it goes to the point of I was sold a dream, or I joined this organization is not what I thought it was going to be. The egos and all that things always come to that, you
Hmm.
know
Yeah.
and everything. So um I would say, yeah, it's an art that's not there. I think it could be, but I think a big part of why it's not there is those egos. I think egos play a huge part in that. And when you have big personalities, and then you get individuals that don't have big personalities, the big personality overtakes the
Mm.
personalities, and
Wow.
then
Wow. Yeah. No. No. That's real, man.
yeah.
That is a great observation.
So
Yeah.
they're
So,
just
with all that being said, my brother, how can people contact you?
That's a great question, my friend. People can contact me. They can go to the Greek University website, and you'll find my contact information there.
Yeah.
GreekUniversity.org, right? Yeah, they can go
Yeah.
there. They can see, my presentations and what I'm working on. I'm actually
Hmm.
working on a rebranding. Thanks to my man Eddie, he's been helping me with some of my rebranding. Developing new bios, and I'm actually developing new topics for my presentation. So if you go there and you don't see the topic, you be the letters, do know that it might have changed, but it's the same context of what I'm doing. Just trying to make it
Hmm.
more efficient, or really showcase what I'm really trying to do through those talks. So, but yeah, it's on there. You can email me at edson.o'neale@gmail.com. So my first name, last name, all small caps. You can email me to kind of reach out. I'm on LinkedIn. If you type in Edson O'Neale, you'll find me on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook, Edson O'Neale. I'm on TikTok and Instagram, Big Ed 1906. So those are my handles. You can find me there. So yeah, like if anyone needs any support, have questions, need some guidance, want to bring me to talk, or provide different things, I'm also trying to get into maybe hosting retreats for organizations, because those are things that I really did. I felt very strongly about as a activities director at St. Leo, hosting retreats and developing team building opportunities, developing our goals, developing accountability plan and strategies of how we can hold each other accountable and move forward. So yeah, those are some ways you can get a hold of me.
All of that available in the show notes, so you can figure out how to reach out to my man, Edson O'Neale, speaker, higher education advocate, speaker with Greek University. My brother, thank you so much. This is a great conversation for joining me on Ethocast.
Man, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you finally having me on. I know we had to work out some things, but we got it done. As alpha men always do. We get it done.